Locked On Dolphins. Today is Wednesday, May 18th, 2022. And we heard from Coach McDaniel and a couple members of the Miami Dolphins yesterday as the team enters into the third phase of OTAs this summer. So we're going to talk about everything that was said from Coach McDaniel, from Sony Michel, from Nick Needham. Stay tuned. Locked On Dolphins. Let's get after it.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Dolphins fans? Kyle Krabs, your host here on Locked On Dolphins, lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, director of scouting at draftnetwork.com. Your host here on Locked On Dolphins. Today on the show, reacting to some of the snippets and quotes from Dolphins press availability that happened on Tuesday, May 17th. So yesterday, got a chance. And by the way, I don't know what you guys thought of the Tuesday show, which was very scheme specific, but I had a lot of fun with that. So if you guys missed that one, I would definitely recommend go check that out. I kind of sink my teeth into conceptually some staples, can implement them in the here and. But Coach McDaniel obviously got up on the podium, and the first thing he did was he ribbed the South Florida media for being so dialed into OTAs with two playoff games. Of course, the Florida Panthers playing in the second round of the NHL playoffs, and the Miami Heat playing in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Boston Celtics. Get out of here. Anyway, I digress. So McDaniel gave him a hard time about that. That was fun. But want to work through some of the questions that Coach McDaniel fielded and answered, in addition to some of the other players that we heard from yesterday. The first question that he was asked was about two additions since the draft with Sony Michel. What was the thinking that you just can't have enough quality backs with Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert and Myles Gaskin and Savon Ahmed? And then with Melvin Ingram, was there just a feel that another edge player could help for depth reasons? Got into the technicalities right off the jump. The latter of the two I have not seen pen to paper yet. So revert. We'll talk about our Dolphins players, but hopefully we'll be able to talk about him soon. So that deal not officially signed yet, and therefore he passed on talking about technically a free agent. But that's kind of the world we live in, right? Where you get the report that players have agreed to terms, but they don't technically sign, and therefore they're in kind of this limbo status where they can't talk about them. They're not a part of the team, but they've agreed to sign with the team, and so on and so forth. So as far as Sony Michel goes, Coach McDaniel said, if you have the opportunity in the offseason to add a player of his caliber, of his pedigree, with him being as a human being and multiple Super Bowl winner, we jumped at the opportunity. His interest fit our interest, and competition for the Miami Dolphins is only a good thing. I think one thing that's unique about that particular room is no one shies away from competition. Everybody in there is excited for the offense, for the opportunities, and wants the best man to win and aren't backing away from that. Excellent. They shouldn't. We should all embrace the competitiveness that room is going to field. And I certainly think about what the competitiveness in that room has looked like the last couple of years. And it's going to be similarly competitive, but with a much higher floor for what the actual talent level is. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Sony Michel is going to rush for 1,300 yards this year, but he's a capable back, and he's got certain dynamics and concepts that I think he can win in. And he's got certain interchangeability with Chase Edmonds, and he has certain interchangeability in my mind with Raheem Mostert. So he's not a 22 miles per hour guy, and we're going to talk about miles per hour here in just a minute. But I think there is enough interchangeability there that he's somebody who you can run concepts that either one of your other two early backs would afford you. Coach McDaniel was asked specifically immediately afterwards about Raheem Mostert, who is recovering from injury, has missed significant time over the last couple of seasons. Coach McDaniel said, I know his expectations are to play week one, but we're not going to rush it. He's come too far to have a setback. So he's just diligently working day in and day out. But when he's ready, he'll be on the field for sure. There were some fun questions that he fielded, but I want to try to keep these player specific as best as I possibly can as we work through today's show. And he was asked about Lynn Bowden Jr., who is a little off the radar based on the fact that Lynn missed all of last year with a hamstring issue and kind of out of sight, out of mind, but would have been a very valuable player. He was a very intriguing player in the NFL draft process, which is why he was drafted in the third round by the Las Vegas Raiders. Your views on Lynn Bowden and what he can offer. And I appreciated Coach McDaniel's answer here because it goes back to that college resume that I just mentioned. Lynn, he does have an interesting skill set. I've always been drawn to players that have multiple positions, specifically quarterback experience, because of the way they see the game. I like that. Lynn's been battling some hamstring stuff. He's been diligent in the meeting room, and we don't really get ahead of myself when we're looking at our team. So I don't think his teammates should either. We'll know if Lynn's ready to contribute to the team when he's on the field, and we're trying to get him there, and he's making sure, I know he's making sure that he's prepared for his opportunity when he is healthy. First of all, you hate to hear that it sounds like, but maybe not. I know he's been working with Tua Tagovailoa in the offseason training that he's been doing, and he appears to be very active. So I certainly hope Lynn gets a chance to play a full season, first and foremost. But I did think it was interesting that Coach McDaniel was a little bit coy as far as when he's ready. And when he's ready, that he's going to be ready for that opportunity. But I really liked where he went and what he chose to touch on as it pertains to the quarterback experience. Because, of course, as a quarterback, you have to have a greater understanding, especially at the lower levels of competition, because as you get to the higher levels of competition, your expectation is everybody on the field is going to have those understandings about everyone's assignments and responsibilities. That's not always the case at the college level or lower levels of football. But for somebody who at the college level played wide receiver and then played quarterback and then had to familiarize themselves with the blocking concepts and how it all ties together and who's the unblocked man in the front because we ran an option style offense, that gives you a certain processing power that I think opens and unlocks a lot of doors for you as far as opportunity and utilization goes. And we saw that from Lynn as a rookie. With how he was used in the slots, some manufactured touches, wildcat quarterback a couple of times. So that's especially one of the reasons why I want to see him get healthy and get the opportunity to play a full season, because there's a lot of different implementations that you could see. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, and ooh-wee, these things are delicious. They are absolutely positively the best protein bar I have ever eaten. Right now, you can visit Built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and save 15% off your next order. That is Built.com, promo code LOCK15 to save 15% off your next order of the world's most delicious protein bar. Coach McDaniel asked about the race. Probably three guys on this team are not only fast, but eager to show they're the fastest on the team. Are you going to let them race? And most importantly, are we going to see it? With a persuasive argument, maybe you can convince, and he stops himself and says, I'm not going to tell them not to race. I love competitors. I'm also not going to force them to race. So if I were you guys and they were to do so at one of the 5 practices that you guys are at, and you guys were able to persuade them to do it at one, the guy pushing for my race the hardest, I would put my wagers on amongst your betting selves. I would not bet because there are some very, very fast guys on the team, but I enjoy the fact that they're competitive about that, and I would never keep them from doing so. I'm more trying to get them to figure out how to run a route, defend a go ball, run the ball. Did I cover my bases? I did. Then to have them compete in a race. We do track miles per hour on every practice. So they don't necessarily need to race side by side for me to put that in front of them as a motivating factor. The immediate follow-up question, you have to tell us who the fastest now if you know you're tracking it. Coach McDaniel, I don't have to. That wouldn't be fair yet because not all players are able to take part in the race yet. There's been a good amount. I would like to repeat, this is not an audio glitch right now. A good amount of 21 and 22 mile per hour runners out there. I'm not going to be mad if there's more additionally in the future. Multiple 21/22 mile per hour athletes on the field for the Dolphins. And here I thought the race left town the other week. Of course, we had to get some kind of corny F1 joke in here along the way. That is obviously very exciting, especially when you go back to the show that we talked about yesterday and the ways that you can implement that kind of speed and threaten levels and then layer routes underneath of that initial push up the field. We know how fast Tyreek Hill is. We know how fast Jaylen Waddle is. I know there's some question and narrative and blah, 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 blah about how fast Jaylen Waddle actually is because he didn't break any and he had to catch against Carolina and he got tracked down, but that was because he had an angle. The defender had an angle. And like, Waddle can blaze, guys. Go watch the punt return against LSU from 2019. I was at that game. I sat in the upper bowl in the end zone that Waddle ran that punt back to. And it's a different speed than every other player on the field. And that's why he scored on that play. Go watch the Missouri game from 2020 and watch him close ground and stack vertically, despite the fact that they're playing two high safeties and they're shading one of those safeties over top of his stem, and he still gets over top of it. Just because the Dolphins offense had the limitations that it did, that did not create the kind of spacing needed for those explosive plays to consistently manifest themselves, does not mean Jaylen Waddle is not blinding fast. And if he raced Tyreek Hill, I'd probably lean Tyreek, but it would be really effing close. Really effing close. So that was some of the big stuff that came from Coach McDaniel. Some other stuff feathered in there talking about how you're trying to implement in OTAs and the messaging you're trying to get across your players and so on and so forth. But those were the ones, and because they were player oriented, they really stood out to me. And I really am glad and appreciative that we got to hear from this next guy, because I have a running theory on this next guy, and it's Noah Igbinoghene. And obviously Noah Igbinoghene is a sore spot for a lot of Dolphins fans because he was drafted 30th overall, and we knew he was a raw cornerback coming out. He had only played corner for like 2 years at Auburn. He was originally a wide receiver. He struggles to get on the field the last 2 years, despite being a top 32 pick. And there were running backs on the board that the Dolphins scorned and did not take. And nobody's going to want to hear really what I have to say right now as it pertains to Noah Igbinoghene. But I can see a pathway for Noah being a consistent contributor on the Dolphins in 2022, and it's on teams. And I'm sure there will be some who roll your eyes and you turn the podcast off, or you fast forward the next 3 minutes and say, Kyle, shut up. Nobody drafts somebody at 30th overall to play on special teams. And you're right, they don't. But like, you got him under contract. He's going to be here. Maybe you can facilitate a trade if he shows well in the preseason. Maybe you want to keep a hold of him based on the dead money that's going to be affiliated with getting rid of him this offseason. Maybe you want to stay committed because he's a super young player. He's like one of the youngest players in the 2020 draft. The extra insurance might not be a bad thing. But the Dolphins let Mac Hollins go. They let Matt Collins walk, and Matt Collins' biggest contribution to the team, despite the fact that I think he led Dolphins wide receivers in touchdown catches last year, right? Like, Mac was very productive from an offensive standpoint, despite the fact that that never was an ideal role for him. Noah did some of the same things that Mac did on the punt team. And I think there's a chance that Noah made Mac expendable on special teams, because I'm watching games, and I've been doing it the last couple of weeks, watching all 22 cuts, and that includes special teams, that includes the punt team, and Noah's out there, and when he's out there, he looks pretty good. So that might be the path to consistent playing time for Noah, and it's a foot in the door at the very least. Is it what we wanted? No, it's probably not what Noah wanted either. But it's the situation we find ourselves in, and we can either choose to throw our hands up and quit and completely walk away, or we could choose to work forward and try to find pathways on the field. And as long as he's here, that's what I'm committed to trying to do, is find pathways for Noah Igbinoghene to consistently contribute to this football team. And I think teams is going to be one of those ways. But he was asked two questions that I wanted to touch on here. How have you felt about the change in coaching with Sam Madison and Pat Surtain? How has that been for you? Noah said, I love them. Especially, I feel like there's definitely a lot of experience in that room. Not saying there wasn't last year, but those guys played the position and they played at a high level. Just to be able to learn, they're great teachers as well. I'm blessed to be able to learn from them. So our first really strong ringing endorsement for both Sam and Pat, which I'm absolutely here for. But the other question that really jumped to me was, with your first two seasons being kind of rocky, what do you take from it that you can build on? And here's what Noah had to say. Approaching every day just to get better every single day and be present on that day and not worry about the past or the future. Like you said, the last 2 years have been rocky for me. So not to worry about none of that, not to worry about my future. Just take today and worry about today and focus on today and get better today. Take that same plan and routine, take it tomorrow, and do the same thing as well. I applaud that mentality for a really young player who has been lambasted by this fan base. Like I said, it's okay for us to openly acknowledge, expectations have not been met relative to the investment that was made in Noah Igbinoghene. That, like, we can all agree that's the case, right? Just like we are. We also heard from Sony Michel. But before we get to Sony Michel, about friends at BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the number one source for all your sports bet needs and information on all the latest odds, sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, even the NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting, playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Sony Michel. Heard from Sony Michel. The first thing Sony was asked is, how does it feel to be back? Sony said, it feels great to be back home, be with a great team, a team that I've watched from afar, a team that I've competed against, knowing guys on the team and knowing what they are about, knowing how hard this team works and seeing how hard this team works. I'm excited. Great. I'm also excited for Sony and the role that he's going to play on this team. I don't know how I feel about him wearing number 34, but he was asked about wearing number 34. Does it mean anything to you rocking 34 and playing for the Dolphins? Everybody knows this is a great number. Ricky ran the ball hard here and did a lot of numbers. I can't be rocking it just to rock it. I got to come out here and put in some work. Okay, now I can get behind the mentality. If he knows the heritage and he's ready to represent Ricky Williams, go ahead, do your best Ricky Williams impression, Sony. Let's see what you got. The immediate follow-up to that, was there ever running back you had posted on your wall, you grew up here in South Florida. Was Ricky that guy? Surprisingly not. For Sony, it was Ronnie Brown. I had Ronnie Brown, Reggie Bush, he was here for a little bit. So those are some of the guys. So this is what I'm taking away from this for Sony. The fact that he's a South Florida dude and the fact that he's invested in the team, has been invested in the team and the heritage of the team, it kind of gives me that same endearing sense that like when Coach McDaniel first got hired and he flew on the jet across and he gets to the team facility and he's walking through and he's looking at Zonk on the walls and he's looking at Shula on the walls and he can't help but like talk out loud about it as he's kind of like basking and like, hey, this is home now. That's really cool. And I really enjoy getting that vibe from Sony Michel. But the questioning eventually came back to the competitiveness in the running back room, which is obviously a hot button issue for Dolphins fans, given the wants of getting that room in a different level than what it's been the last couple of years. And he was asked, there's 4 starting NFL running backs on the roster with you, Raheem Mostert, Chase Edmonds, and Myles Gaskin. Is your hope to be the starter opening day? Are you coming in here thinking it's an open competition, and can you seize that? Definitely is the response. Iron sharpens iron. I know these guys' skill sets. They're all great running backs. They're all great runners. To your point, they're all starters. I think it benefits this team that we compete our best and eventually will be our best. The opportunities will come. You just need to take advantage of them. Outstanding. The last player that I wanted to touch on quickly was Nick Needham. And obviously Nick Needham being a holdover from the start of the rebuild in 2019 as an undrafted free agent and what he's become and how he's worked to get better and establish himself from being a player who was kind of fringe. But his instincts got better, his versatility improved, and now all of a sudden Nick Needham is somebody who I personally am very happy to see on this roster for a 4th year. And he was asked about that. He was asked about this being the first time he's talked to the media since signing the restricted free agent tender. How did it feel to get that extension from the Dolphins? Nick said it was a blessing. I wouldn't want to play anywhere else other than Miami. It was my first team that gave me a shot and kept it honest with me. They brought me up from a fat young dude out of shape, get right practice squad, to starting to play with these guys. I can't be more grateful for the opportunity. I just ready to keep proving that I can play and compete at this level, at a high level, and keep going up from there. Awesome reflection, talking about the maturation that Nick himself has had, and you see it. You see it. You know, he was not somebody who had a great or impressive athletic profile coming out of college. And I still don't think he has Byron Jones or Xavier Howard or even Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle. Like, he doesn't have that kind of athleticism. But with where he plays and the versatility that he brings and all the different things that he can do and the instincts that he has shown that he's developing, you don't need to be a 4-3 athlete to play the roles that Nick is going to play for you. And if you get him in a situation where you have to play him outside, yeah, I mean, you're probably going to be pretty mindful. Hey, we're not going to play cover 0 and let him play off coverage against a 4-3-5 receiver and just tell him, hey, go get it done. Like, you want to have a better athlete matchup on your hands, and that's fine. But that speed was something that Nick was asked about, and that's where I'll leave this podcast because it brings us full circle to Coach McDaniel and his comments about speed. How does Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle's speed compare from tape to the practice field? You're like, damn, he's fast on film. But then you really get it right in front of him. And it's like, oh man, these two definitely have a different speed. It's going to be great this year just to work versus that every day because it's like nobody's going to be faster than these two. If we can win versus them, we should win a lot. And if the Dolphins defense wins a lot because they're getting forged by that fire every day, and the Dolphins running back room is getting forged by fire every day, both competing with 4 guys who have started games as running backs in the NFL, and the Dolphins wide receivers are getting forged by fire with their speed, and they bring that element, and Coach McDaniel can tie it all together, and Tua Tagovailoa can take command of the offense. We're cooking with gas, folks. Check your pulse. Kyle Krabs, Locked On Dolphins, fins up. Keep it here right on Locked On Dolphins, your team every day. Make it a great Wednesday, and we will talk with you.